Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be taking a look at 5 quick tips for the Black Square B60 Duke. The first one is a relatively quick one. One of the things we always struggle with the Duke is getting it started. But did you know that if you start at any airport on a runway, your Beechcraft Duke, regardless of the turbine version or if you're using the regular piston version, will start ready. Just like that, ready to rock. The next tip is a classic one that many people miss on checklists. You're sitting here, you're ready to go ahead and activate the automatic pilot. You press the autopilot button, and it keeps beeping at you repeatedly. No matter how many times you press the autopilot doesn't engage. The reason this happened, of course, is because you missed one switch, the electric pitch trim switch. If you do not enable that switch during your initial setup, you'll notice that the automatic pilot will not engage. The next tip is going to be concentrated on the regular piston Duke. One of the tricky things in the piston Duke is these lovely little cowl flaps hanging off the bottom of the engine. Now, one of the things you're already very well familiar with is the fact that I can come down here and I can press and hold the switch using both and basically crank them open or crank them closed. One of the things you probably notice about that process is that it takes a very long time, about 15 seconds overall for the purposes of getting them all the way to the position that you need to get them. Now, that's a little tedious. That's a bit too much work. But what you probably didn't know is if you go into your controls options and actually add a button for your cowl flaps, for example, if I go to my panel real quick and I type in cowl, one of the things you'll notice is you can actually set an increased cowl flap button and a decreased cowl flap button. Now, the reason that's so great is if I go outside my aircraft, if I were to tap that button once or twice, you'll see that I can crank those cowl flaps open instantaneously. The next tip deals with the cabin temperature, something that is well simulated on this aircraft. As we all know, we have a pretty sophisticated system for the purposes of maintaining or not maintaining the different temperatures of our aircraft during flight. But what you might not have realized is there's actually a couple tools to make it a little bit easier for us. One thing you'll notice is in the upper right corner, we actually have an indicator of the current cabin temperature. You'll also notice over here on the left, there's actually a light to tell us that the cabin temperature is very low and the cabin temperature is very high. Now, the last thing we have to help us out with cabin temperature, of course, is the little in-game tablet that we have built in. Now, when you go to cabin, one of my favorite things that it'll show you on here is the fact that we know what our temperature is. We also know what mode it's currently on. And we also, of course, have the ability to see things like the outside air temperature and whether or not any of these components are not behaving correctly at this given moment. Now, for example, if I were to come over here and snap the auto heat button on, what you'll observe is that our target temperature is actually 71 Fahrenheit, 22 Celsius, and you can actually see an animation of everything starting to kick in and getting us warmed up. If we want it a little bit warmer, of course, we could always snap that on real quickly, and that'll get it going. But if we really want to warm the cabin up in a hurry, we can just slam it into manual heat. And what that will actually do is set the target temperature to maximum and basically concentrate on getting everything as warm as possible, as quick as possible. And our final quick tip for you is the fact that most people don't realize that you can actually safely start both engines at the same time on the Turbine Duke. This is actually true for a lot of airliners as well. And you can see I've got my 2 engines ready to go. We're currently on external power to be a little bit simpler for us. All we'd have to do is go through and hit all our usual switches and go through the normal motions that we would. We hit ignition, we come over to, we can leave these off. We just go click, and you'll notice that both of our engines will actually start spooling up simultaneously. Now, the one thing you have to be very mindful of when you're doing this is depending on what battery mode you're on, remember the way the battery connects, is it can be difficult to see what specific RPM you're at. So it is important that you do engage your own battery in the event that you're using it. So we got about 17, 18%. We'll go ahead and pop both of those together. And you will notice both of the engines will start up just like that. Enjoy.